Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Before we jump right in, let's just take a quick second to breathe. Seriously, get comfortable, because today we're exploring something that for a lot of you watching is going to feel incredibly, intensely personal. We're talking about a completely different way of moving through the world, one that usually goes totally unrecognized, but absolutely shapes the reality of millions of people. If you've ever felt just totally exhausted by the noise of modern life, this is definitely for you.
So, let me ask you something right out of the gate. Do you ever feel entirely alone, even when you're literally standing in the middle of a massive, thronging crowd? Yeah, it's a jarring feeling, right? That creeping sensation of being an outsider, a total misfit. It's almost like everyone else got handed this secret instruction manual for life, and yours just got lost in the mail. It's so isolating, and yet so many of us secretly carry it.
Well, to really unpack why that happens, we're grounding this explainer in Alyce Dylan's incredible book, Alone in a Sea of Normal. And she uses this absolutely brilliant metaphor. Picture this, a massive, endless sea of identical white umbrellas. And right in the middle, one single blue umbrella, standing out completely. That blue umbrella is what Dylan calls the sixth-sensed individual, trying to make their way in a stubbornly five-sensed world.
Now, what if I told you there is absolutely 100% nothing wrong with you? Actually, scratch that. It's more like society's definition of the word normal is what's causing the friction. Right now, normal basically just describes five-sensed people who follow the rules of their social structures and comfortably live within those expectations. But if you're wired differently, trying to hammer yourself into that tiny little box, that's exactly where your pain comes from.
Moving on to Section 1, 5 versus 6 senses, a mechanical difference.
Let's break down how this actually works on a mechanical level, because the contrast is pretty wild. For a five-sensed person, reality is mostly about manifested form, right? Light, sound, taste, smell, touch. But for the sixth-sensed, it's a whole other ballgame. They're physically, viscerally impacted by vibrational realities. They are literally pulling in energetic information all the time. So things like raw emotion, unspoken truths, and hidden patterns, those hit a sixth-sensed person just as hard, just as vividly as a blinding light or a deafening siren.
Dylan has this quote that just hits the nail on the head. The sixth-sensed are as injured by the act of causing injury to another as the person they injure. Just think about that for a second. When cruelty or injustice happens, it's not some abstract concept to a sensitive person. It is a physical violation. And honestly, this is exactly why the often ruthless behavior of the general public can completely blindside you. You literally can't wrap your head around causing pain, because for you, hurting someone else actually physically hurts you.
Which brings us to Section 2, History of the Misunderstood, from Reverence to Rejection.
So you might be wondering, why on earth does the world feel so hostile to this kind of perception? Well, let's look back. Historically, things used to be very different. In ancient tribes, these individuals were actually revered as sages, the wise ones who could warn of danger or guide leaders. But as civilizations got bigger and more obsessed with absolute control, these seers suddenly became a threat. They were actively hunted and persecuted by ruling classes. And today, modern society doesn't hunt them, but it absolutely tries to hush them up, writing off this incredible sensitivity as just fragility or heavily medicating it away.
But here is the crazy part. Despite all of that historical suppression and social conditioning, sensitives are still here. In fact, recent studies in our source material showed that 15 to 20% of the population are sensitives. Guys, that is a massive slice of humanity. To put that into perspective, even if most people are deeply masking their true nature, that number proves something huge. If you feel this way, you're absolutely not alone. You're part of a massive, albeit hidden, global community.
Let's look at Section 3, the indigo child phenomenon.
For the last 40 years or so, society has been scrambling to label this growing demographic. You've probably heard the term indigo children, right? It was popularized back in the 70s by a researcher named Nancy Ann Tappy to describe a new wave of highly intuitive kids. And while it sounds super celebratory, Dylan points out a massive blind spot here. The whole indigo movement often totally glosses over the agonizing trauma of what it's actually like to be a hypersensitive kid stuck growing up with five-sensed adults who fundamentally do not get you.
To give you a real sense of this, Dylan shares this chilling story from her own childhood. When she was just 5 years old, she woke up screaming for her grandmother, knowing, energetically sensing, that her gran was in terrible danger. And the adults? They just brushed it off as a bad dream and told her to go back to sleep. But shortly after the phone rang, it was the hospital saying her grandmother had been in a horrific car crash. The adults were stunned, sure, But instead of validating her, they just hushed the whole thing up and never spoke of it again. That right there, that is the quiet trauma of a misunderstood sixth-sensed child.
All right, moving into Section 4, Signs You Are Sixth-Sensed, examining your lived experience.
Let's bring this right back to you. I want us to do a quick internal inventory. Based on an article called Trailblazers, there are 6 distinct hallmarks of a sixth-sensed person. So as I go through these, just kind of mentally check them off. Number 1, do you feel separate even in a packed stadium? Number 2, have you ever faced massive backlash just for saying the quiet part out loud? 3, does your clear-sightedness actually make people fear you sometimes, like you know their secrets? 4, have you been told your whole life that you are just too much? 5, can you feel the energy of a room shift before anyone even opens their mouth? And 6, are you constantly grasping for labels like empath or neurodivergent to just explain why you exist this way?
If you were nodding along to those, then you absolutely know the heavy cost of the chameleon persona. To survive in a world that feels incredibly loud, totally abrasive, and just lacking in authenticity, you learn to mask. You mimic the normal behavior. But man, is that exhausting. It traps you in this constant, draining state of fear, always terrified of being found out as a fake, all because you had to bury your authentic self just to get through the day.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the new human evolution, reclaiming your path.
Okay, here is where we flip the script entirely. All that pain, all that hiding, it's based on a massive misunderstanding of what you actually are. We need to reframe this right now. Evolution isn't just a physical thing anymore. It's not just about, walking upright. Humanity is adapting inward. The emergence of the sixth sense isn't some weird anomaly or a flaw to fix. It's a literal evolutionary leap. You are adapting to receive complex, energetic information. You aren't a broken version of normal at all. You are literally the leading edge of human evolution.
The materials we're looking at today make this absolutely crystal clear. You were never meant for normal or to live small. I love that so much. You were built to process more, to see the unseen, to feel the unspoken. You are a societal trailblazer. And yeah, the trailblazer always gets the grueling job of hacking through the brush first, but it is such a vital, heroic role. This sensitivity of yours, it's not a liability. For sure, it's your ultimate evolutionary asset.
So, what does this all mean for you today? It leaves us with one incredibly important question. Now that you know the real story, that you aren't broken and never were, are you ready to drop that chameleon mask? Are you ready to step up as an evolutionary trailblazer and actually help forge a new, more authentic world? It's definitely a wild ride, but stepping into that true power is exactly what you were built for. Think about that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.